oil tanks. That is in Bug Light Park. Commemorates the building of the Liberty ships during World War II. There were over 300 ships built for England and over 100 for the United States. That was right here between South Portland, which is that little hook on that side, and then Portland on this side. Of course, the oil tanks weren't there. However, the pirates were. And then further out in the water is the Spring Point Harbor Light. The Spring Point Harbor Light is sometimes called the Ledge Lighthouse because it's built on a ledge that claims 7 shipwrecks before the lighthouse was allowed to be built. Divers went down 7 ledge. And 4 Points Marina will become as well as islands. You'll see why when we get around these yachts, silly yachts sitting out here. Customs Border Patrol has come through twice now. Any of the single yacht. We also have 5 schooners, and one of the schooners is at full sail here. Now we have a 14-foot tide, and the tide has just turned around and it's on its way back in. We've got 6 hours to go. You will causeway with a car going across so that you can see the scale of the island. That was the original summer home. And then there's a brick building rising out of the tree line. That brick building originally was the Mariners Hospital. That was built in the 1770s. It would rotate when the train was coming so that it met rail to rail here. So it could swing back and forth or call it quits. And you can see what happened. The bridge has now remained open since 1980.
Started that fire in a boatyard on the waterfront. We had 30,000 people living here at the time, and one day later, only 20,000 of them still had homes. Guess what happened to the first 2 city halls? They did burn down. And now we have a fire station across the street, which was built a few years after the last city hall burned down, and they're doing a great job. City Hall is not burned down. Quack in the right. City Hall is not burned down since we've had this place. That was built. This was Portland's Chinatown. If you're interested in that Chinese-American history here in Portland, look it up online. There's a whole trail with landmarks all throughout the city. Around the turn of the 20th century, this place was full of Chinese laundries, restaurants, and gambling parlors. The monument to the Civil War soldiers is an appropriate one for Maine. We sent more people to fight in the Civil War than any other state in the Union, per capita. I don't think that dilutes it, right? Per capita, it's still very, very important, you know. Otherwise, everything goes to New York, you know. We got to hold on to something here in Portland, Maine. Small state, small city. How about by the way they're dressed? I can actually pick out a hipster when they're eating, because you'll see them doing this. And so you're like, what are you doing, man? It's more international. This place on the left, the Portland Museum of Art. If you go to the top floor, you'll find the sculptures of Bernard Langley. He was my favorite artist ever featured there. This place on the right is the State Theater, last remaining theater from the vaudeville era of the 1920s. It's also where I went to see the Rocky Horror Picture Show for the first time when I was 13, 1995. A little too young for Rocky Horror, if you ask me. Now, I brought up Longfellow earlier. He is the most famous person from Portland, historically speaking, as was Judd Nelson. He was the bad kid in the Breakfast Club, part of the Brat Pack in the 1980s. Liv Tyler was also raised here. She was in the Lord of the Rings movies. Up ahead on the... This is where you can see our hockey team play. That's the Maine Mariners. It's also a concert venue. On opening day, we had ZZ Top playing here. That's why I wear these cheap sunglasses. So the plaster mold was displayed at the World's Fair. Quack, quack on the left. Quack, quack. And the bronze statue you're looking at now is from the 1970s, made using the same plaster mold. This street we're crossing now is called Exchange Street, and and this was the Wall Street of Portland in the late 1800s. First, folks on the right, you'll get that same ocean view on your side in a little bit. You also get to enjoy architecture on the right, and the folks who live in these buildings, they like to call it the front row. You can find a cheap apartment 10 or 20 years ago here, but not so much anymore. The architecture out on the water includes Fort Gorges. That's the big stone building rising right out of the water. The thing about that fort is, the locals around here don't appreciate it. They don't even care. They take that fort for granted. Quack, quack. And here's the Eastern Promenade Park on the left. We'll be driving through it. The town of Portland started buying land here. But, don't worry about him. He's just confused. The thing is, he used to be a doctor, but they had to take his license away because they found out that he was a quack. Quack, quack.
Quack, quack.
Yeah, he'll be on the right here. Here we go, folks. Heading in.
Now we're floating.
It's not reaching.
you.